A family healing vacation was supposed to bring us back together until my ticket got canceled and my brother wore that smug little smile. I didn't beg to be included. I let him prove who he really was. I'm Ryan, 31M. I live a few states away from where I grew up because distance is the only thing that ever made my family feel manageable. My younger brother Caleb, 27M, has been the center of our universe for as long as I can remember. He's charming, funny, and somehow always the victim. If something goes wrong, it's never because he chose badly. It's because someone pushed him, set him off, or didn't support him. I was the other kid, the one who got praised for being easy, the one who learned early that if I stayed calm, did well in school, and didn't complain, the house stayed peaceful. And if I did complain, the problem wasn't what Caleb did, it was my attitude. People always ask, but what did he actually do? Like it has to be one huge incident. For us, it was 1,000 little ones, small betrayals with plausible deniability. When I was 14, my grandpa gave me his old pocket watch. Not expensive, but it had history. Caleb wanted it the second he saw it. I said no. A week later, it disappeared. My parents accused me of losing it and being careless with family things. Months later, I found it in Caleb's dresser with the glass scratched. He shrugged and said, "Finders keepers." When I showed my mom, she stared at it for one painful second, then said, "Maybe you left it in his room and forgot." Caleb smirked the whole time. In high school, I finally saved enough to buy a used guitar. Caleb begged to borrow it for one night to impress a girl. I refused. The next day, the strings were cut, clean, like someone used scissors. Caleb looked at it and said, wide-eyed, "Dude, that's crazy. Maybe the cat?" We didn't have a cat. My dad sighed and told me I was being dramatic for saying the word sabotage. The worst part was always the way he'd do it. Not openly cruel, but just enough to make me doubt myself. And every time I tried to push back, my parents acted like I was the one creating a problem. So I left as soon as I could. I worked my way through school. I built a boring, stable adult life, and I kept my contact with my family polite and shallow. Holiday calls, a few visits, no real expectations. Then my dad had a heart scare. The kind that makes your mom's voice sound like it's coming from a different person. The kind that makes you book a flight without thinking. Because whatever resentment you've been carrying, you don't want your last conversation with your dad to be an argument. He recovered, but it shook him. He started saying things like, "I don't want to waste time," and "we should do something together." I wanted to believe it meant he finally saw me. I wanted to believe it wasn't just fear talking. A month later, he suggested a family trip, just the four of us. I didn't want to go. I knew exactly how it would feel. Me trying, Caleb needling, my parents smoothing everything over, and me leaving exhausted. But my dad looked smaller than I remembered. He was taking new meds, counting his steps, forcing himself to slow down. He wanted this. So I said yes. I took vacation time, cleared my schedule, and stayed at my parents' house the night before our early flight. Caleb had already claimed the guest room and told me to relax and take the couch. I did because pushing back is never worth the noise. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle, and I had that familiar internal debate. Am I overreacting? Is this what being an adult is? Showing up anyway, even when you know the script? The next morning at the airport, everything was normal until we printed boarding passes. My mom's printed, my dad's printed, Caleb's printed, mine didn't. The kiosk flashed, reservation canceled. At first I thought I hit the wrong button. I tried again. Same message. We went to the counter. The agent typed for a minute, then said, "This reservation was canceled online last night. Refund already processed to the original card." My dad blinked like he couldn't compute it. "That's not possible. I booked all four together." The agent kept her voice neutral. "It was canceled from the purchaser's account." I looked at Caleb. He wasn't even trying to hide it. His mouth was pulled tight like he was holding back a grin. I said, flatly, "Did you do this?" He widened his eyes. "What? No, why would I?" My mom snapped into defense mode instantly. "Ryan, don't accuse your brother. Airlines mess up all the time." My dad tried to stay calm. "Let's just fix it." There were no seats left on that flight. There was a later flight the next day, but it cost more, and I'd missed the first day of the trip. My dad hesitated. "We could postpone," my mom cut in. "Your father needs this break. We can't waste the tickets. Ryan travels for work all the time." She said it like it was practical, like it didn't matter. I looked at my dad. He didn't meet my eyes. He rubbed his chest like stress was a physical thing he could knead away and said, "Maybe you can meet us later, son." Caleb's eyes flicked to me. He looked pleased. Something in me went still. Not dramatic, not angry. Just a cold clarity I'd avoided for years. "Okay," I said. "Go." My mom looked relieved, like I'd saved her from having to choose. My dad looked guilty, but didn't stop moving. A few minutes later, I was standing by myself with a suitcase, watching my parents and my brother disappear into security. I won't pretend I was noble. I sat down in the terminal and felt humiliated. Not because I missed a vacation, because my parents had once again decided my absence was easier than confronting Caleb. I drove back to my apartment that afternoon. The whole way, I kept hearing my mom's sentence. "Ryan travels for work all the time." Like my life outside that house made me disposable. When I got home, I did something I've never been good at. I didn't immediately patch the hole. I didn't call to argue. I didn't offer solutions. I just sat with the feeling, and then I did what I do at work when something doesn't add up. I collected proof. My dad is bad with technology. The night before the flight, he'd asked me to help with his laptop. I'd noticed his airline account was still logged in. I hadn't touched it, but I remembered. I texted him, "Can you send me a screenshot of the cancellation email? Need the reference number to rebook." He sent it immediately. The email showed the exact time the cancellation happened, 10:43 p.m., the night before the flight. At 10:43 p.m., my dad was asleep in his recliner. My mom was cleaning the kitchen. I was on the couch. Caleb was the only one awake at the dining room table, checking something on my dad's laptop. I also called the airline. The agent couldn't give me everything, but she confirmed it wasn't an automated cancellation, and it wasn't initiated by the airline. It came from a logged-in account. Someone clicked cancel. Someone chose it. I saved the screenshot. I didn't send it back with a sarcastic comment. I didn't start a fight. I just kept it. For the first couple days of their trip, my parents FaceTimed like everything was fine. My mom showed me the view from their hotel. My dad smiled and said he missed me. Caleb popped into frame once and joked, "Look who didn't make it." I smiled, kept it polite, and didn't offer to solve anything. Then, on the third day, my mom called at an hour she never calls. She sounded panicked. "Ryan, we need help." "What happened?" I asked, already sitting up. "It's Caleb," she said, and there was fear in her voice I'd never heard before. "He used our card. A lot. The bank locked it. He changed the password. We can't access anything." I took a breath. "Where's Dad?" "In the lobby. He's stressed." "What about his meds?" "We have them, but Ryan's security got involved. Caleb. He yelled at staff. The police came. He's being held overnight." Held overnight. In my family, that translated to, Caleb finally met a situation he couldn't talk his way out of. My mom's voice cracked. "We don't have access to our money, and the hotel is asking for a deposit to cover the rest of the stay. And they said if we can't cover it, we'll have to..." "I don't know, Ryan. Your father looks awful." She didn't say it outright, but we both knew what she wanted. Me to fix it. Because I always fix it. I stared at my ceiling and felt two things at once. Genuine worry for my dad, and a grim satisfaction that Caleb's little tricks were finally landing somewhere hard. "I'll help you and Dad," I said. "But listen carefully." "Yes," she said fast. "I'm sending money for the hotel deposit so you two can get to your room," I said. I'll cover transportation if Dad needs a clinic. I'm not paying to clean up Caleb's mess." "But he's your brother," she whispered. "And I'm your son," I said, quieter. "And you left without me." Silence. Then my mom said, small and shaken, "Okay." I wired money. I stayed on the phone until they got back to their room. I made my dad promise he'd take his meds and rest. I talked to him directly, in that calm voice I reserve for emergencies, and he sounded tired in a way that scared me. That night my dad texted me, "Thank you. I'm sorry." Those 2 words hit harder than I expected. The next day my parents called again, and they weren't asking for money this time. They were asking what to do. My mom said, "Caleb admitted he changed the bank password. He said he had to. He said you're trying to turn us against him." My dad sounded exhausted. "Ryan, we didn't want to believe you for years." That sentence almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was late. So late. I said, "When you get home, we talk." Without him. They cut the trip short and came home early. Caleb came back too, with a story about being mistreated and targeted. Same script, different setting. He didn't apologize. He acted like the whole thing was an inconvenience that happened to him. A week later, I flew home and sat at my parents' kitchen table like it was a negotiation. My dad started with, "We owe you an apology." I didn't let them skate past it. "For what?" my mom swallowed. "For not listening. For defending him. For leaving without you." I slid my phone across the table and showed them the cancellation screenshot. "This happened while Caleb was on Dad's laptop." My mom stared at it like it was radioactive. I see it." My dad's jaw tightened. "I see it." I didn't enjoy their shock. I'd wanted them to see the truth for years, but seeing it come with this much damage felt more like grief than victory. My mom tried to explain again about the miscarriage years ago and how Caleb felt like a miracle, how she was terrified of losing him, how she thought if she held him tighter he'd be safe, and if she held me looser, I'd be fine. "I was never fine," I said, and my voice shook. That surprised me. I'm not the crying type, but anger has a way of disguising grief until you finally say something out loud. My dad looked like he'd been punched. "Ryan, I know you love him," I said. "I never asked you not to. I asked you to stop sacrificing me to keep him happy." My mom wiped her face and whispered, "What do you want?" I took a long breath and said the part that mattered. "I'm not here to punish you," I said. "I'm here because I'm done being the backup plan. If you want a relationship with me, it comes with boundaries." My dad nodded quickly. "Tell us." "Caleb doesn't get access to your money," I said. "No cards, no passwords, no emergency funds. If he needs help, he gets a job and pays his own way." My mom looked sick. "He'll explode." "Let him," I said. Second," I continued, "he doesn't live here. Not he'll move out eventually. Not just until he gets on his feet. And if he lives here, I'm out. I'm not visiting. I'm not calling. I'm not negotiating with tantrums anymore." My dad's shoulders sagged like he'd been carrying that decision already. "Okay." "And third," I said, "you tell him the truth. You tell him you know he canceled my ticket. You tell him you left anyway and you're ashamed. You tell him he doesn't own you." My mom whispered, "He's going to say we're choosing you." I said, "You're choosing reality." They confronted him 2 days later. I was there, sitting quietly on the couch while my parents did something they'd never done. Hold the line. Caleb walked into the kitchen acting normal, asked what was for dinner, started complaining about his bad luck and how that trip was ruined because everyone overreacted. My dad said, "Sit down." Caleb laughed. "What is this? Another lecture?" My mom said, voice shaking, "Caleb, you canceled Ryan's ticket." His face changed. For a split second he looked caught. Then the outrage mask snapped on. "That's insane." My dad didn't move. "We saw the email, the time, the refund." Caleb stood up, pointing. So you're blaming me now? After everything I've been through? You're letting him poison you. My mom surprised me. She didn't apologize. She didn't soften it. She said, "Stop." Caleb froze, like the word didn't make sense in his mouth. My dad said, "You can't live here anymore." The room went quiet in a way that felt unreal. Caleb stared at them, then at me. "This is because of him." I finally spoke. "No, Caleb. This is because you keep doing things you think you'll never have to pay for." He stepped toward me, close enough to try to intimidate. "You think you're better than me." "I think you've been protected from consequences," I said. "That's different." Caleb's breathing got fast. He started pacing, firing guilt and blame like he always does. He accused my parents of abandoning him. He accused me of jealousy. He accused the world of being unfair. Then he went for the nuclear option. He told my mom he'd tell people what kind of parents you really are. He hinted at calling relatives, posting online, making it messy. My mom's face went white. That's always been Caleb's weapon. He doesn't need to be right. He just needs to be loud enough that everyone gets tired. But my dad said, "Do what you want. You still can't live here." Caleb stared at him like he'd never seen him before. Then he grabbed his jacket and left, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I expected to feel victorious. I didn't. I felt nauseous. My mom sat down like her legs gave out. My dad rubbed his chest and closed his eyes. That was the beginning, not the end. Caleb didn't vanish. He bounced between friends' couches and the occasional night in my parents' basement. He'd show up with a sweet voice, act remorseful, offer just enough apology to hook my mom's guilt, then flip into rage when the boundary held. One night he came in at 2 a.m. and blasted music from his phone through the hallway, laughing when my dad asked him to stop. Another day he borrowed my mom's car and brought it back on empty, then blamed her for not having enough gas money. He hid my dad's house keys for hours and then found them like a hero. Nothing big enough to call the police over, but constant enough to grind them down. My mom called me crying twice that month. Both times she started with, "I don't want to bother you." And both times I could hear the same old pattern trying to restart. Caleb causes chaos. My parents panic. I fix it. I didn't fix it. I helped them make a plan. I told them to change every password, to lock down their bank accounts, to freeze their credit, to keep records. I told them to stop giving Caleb rides, money, or access to anything that could become leverage. And I told them, bluntly, that if they let him back in fully, I was stepping away again. That last part hurt them. I could hear it, but it also made them move. My parents talked to a lawyer about how to formally remove him from the house. They learned the unglamorous truth. Even if your kid is a grown adult causing problems, you still have to follow a process. Paperwork, notices, deadlines. No, just leave. Caleb hated that. He tried guilt first, then anger, then charm. When none of it worked, he tried to make me the villain again. He texted me long messages about how I always hated him, how I was brainwashing our parents, how I was punishing them for old stuff. He ended every message with some version of, "You're tearing the family apart." I didn't reply. I kept screenshots. When the eviction notice finally went up, Caleb had a meltdown in the living room. Not physical, but loud. Screaming, crying, accusing my mom of not loving him, accusing my dad of choosing me. He swung between "I'm sorry" and "you'll regret this" so fast it gave me whiplash. My dad stayed calmer than I expected. Maybe the heart scare gave him a different perspective. Maybe he was just exhausted. He said quietly, "We love you, but we can't live like this." Caleb's face twisted. "So what, you're just going to throw me away?" My mom whispered, "We're not throwing you away." Caleb snapped, "Yes, you are." I thought about how many times I'd felt that exact thing and swallowed it. That's when I realized my revenge wasn't really about Caleb getting consequences. It was about my parents finally facing the truth that love without limits isn't love, it's fear. Caleb moved out before the final court date. He left behind a couple boxes and a note that said, in all caps, "Good luck without me." My mom kept it folded in a drawer. She told me later she opened it sometimes, just to remind herself not to romanticize the past. It's been a few months now. Caleb still pops up with new stories, new excuses, new ways to try to hook my mom's guilt. Sometimes he's sweet and apologetic. Sometimes he's cruel. He hasn't apologized to me once in a way that felt real. I don't expect him to. My parents are trying. It's awkward. It's slow. They keep catching themselves before saying old lines like, "Just be the bigger person." My dad actually said, "We should have protected you," which is a sentence I didn't think I'd ever hear. I'm not magically healed. I still feel my chest tighten when I think about that airport, watching them walk away. I still get that old reflex to prove I'm good enough to deserve space at the table. But now I have something I didn't have as a kid. Choice. I can choose how close I get. I can choose what I tolerate. I can choose not to be the cleanup crew for someone else's chaos. And if I'm being honest, the day my dad said, "You can't live here anymore," I slept better than I have in years. A couple weeks ago, my mom called and asked if I'd come home for dinner. Just them. No surprises. I almost said no, out of habit. But I went. It was weirdly quiet, without Caleb filling every gap with noise. My dad cooked, which he almost never used to do, and my mom kept apologizing for little things like she didn't know what normal looked like anymore. Halfway through the meal, my dad put his fork down and said, "I didn't realize how much we trained you to disappear." I didn't have a clever response. I just nodded and let the silence be honest. Caleb did try to crash it. He texted my mom that he happened to be nearby. She didn't answer. Later, she showed me the message with her hands shaking, then deleted it and said, "Not tonight." That was the first time I saw her choose peace without asking me to pay for it. That's what I'm holding on to. Not a fantasy that we'll become some perfect family, but the reality that things finally have consequences, and I'm allowed to step back when they don't. TLDR. My younger brother, lifelong golden child, canceled my ticket for a family healing trip, and my parents left without me. On the trip, he locked them out of their own money and caused a scene that got him held overnight, forcing my parents to finally see what I'd been saying for years. I helped them get safe, then came home with proof, set hard boundaries, and my parents cut him off and made him move out. My revenge was refusing to keep saving people who kept choosing him over me.